So we'll go ahead and get started. I want to do a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. So again, welcome to Visalia Unified's College and Career Readiness, Ignite Your Curiosity. We do have a website that we would love you to visit. We've got the URL up there, or if you'd like, use the QR code, and so that you can visit our website later this evening. On our website, we have information about college and career readiness. We have a page just for our seniors on how to apply to college. We have information about our CTE pathways and our Link Learning Academies. So there's just a great amount of information on there that will be helpful for you as you're going through school. So please be sure to visit. This evening, if you have questions for our panelists, we would love to hear from you. We will be using the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions, just go ahead and pop questions in there, and I will read them off to our panelists as we go along. Excuse me, as we go along. But welcome, and let's go ahead and ask our panelists to go ahead and join us at this time. If you could go ahead and turn your cameras on and microphones. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. We're excited to hear what you have to tell us, and we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. If I could have each of you go around and let us know your name and your occupation, that would be fantastic. Steve, can we start with you?
Sure. I'm Steve Beal. I'm an officer with the California Highway Patrol, and I'm assigned to the Visalia office off of Acres and Noble.
Welcome. Thank you. And Mike, how about yourself?
I'm Mike Cromer. I'm captain with Visalia Fire Department, and I've been there just about 30 years now. And my station is Fire Station 54, and I'm on the north side of Visalia along Dinuba Highway.
Great. Thank you for being here tonight. Brian, how about you?
Hi, my name is Brian Kern. I'm a division manager with Tulare County Probation, and my office is over at the old Kmart, if you're familiar.
And how about you, Daniel? Wrap it up for us with your name and occupation.
My name is Dan Ford. I'm a lieutenant with the Visalia Police Department, and I'm currently the Northside or District 1 commander for the Patrol Division. Welcome.
Thank you. So each of you have taken different paths, I'm sure, to get where you are. Some of you may have taken the path straight to your chosen career. Others may have tried things along the way. I'd like to kind of hear your story. And there's not a time constraint on how fast or hard, how long you have to make it. I just want to know, basically, how did you get to your occupation, and what does your job involve, and what does a typical day look like for you? Who would like to go first?
I can go ahead and go. My mic's already on, so I might as well start it off. So thank you again for having me. My name, once again, is Brian Kern with the Tulare County Probation Department. I've been there for 10 years, and right now, as the division manager, I oversee our entire adult field division. So if anyone ever sees probation officers out there going around checking on people on probation, that's part of our adult field division. So I would oversee those units there. Right out of high school, I mean, I joined the military, and I had an idea of why I wanted to go into law enforcement when I got out of the military. And when I got out, it was kind of a bit of a recession still. And so the only job really at the time was probation, and I had no idea what probation was all about. And so I took the job, and I kind of fell in love with it from there. I mean, every day is kind of something new, something different. The cool thing about probation is that it's a good opportunity to really help somebody, and you get to actually see somebody who unfortunately has ended up in the criminal justice system at some of their worst times. And you have the opportunity to kind of help them and work with them to get them, back to where maybe they were, or maybe to a point where they've never been before. And you get to celebrate that success with them and kind of share that experience with somebody who may have never otherwise had somebody helping them like we do in the community. I think you're on mute, Ms. Lover.
That's okay. Let's try that again. Can you go more in depth about this helping people? Because I think there's some stereotypes out there that you see in movies and TV shows of what probation is. And it's usually someone's violated and they're going out to sort of a warrant. What does probation really mean?
Yeah, and that's something that's ever changing. Probation is we're a big department, and we serve a lot of different components of the criminal justice world. I mean, we have people out supervising individuals who are on probation, ensuring that, not only are they complying with their court orders, but finding treatment options, finding individualized treatment to somebody who needs a specific treatment plan, and really guiding them through those avenues to kind of get the help they need. We have people who write sentencing reports for major crimes that take place within the county with the local law enforcement agencies when they arrest somebody for any type of felony crime. Most likely a probation officer at some point is going to be involved in that. We have probation officers who supervise juveniles, which is really rewarding and really challenging at the same time. We have probation officers as well as probation correctional officers at our juvenile hall running the juvenile hall right now. With probation, things always seem to be changing. We have units that get added all the time. We have units that are maybe no longer needed. The really interesting thing is that, with as many units as we have in our department, you're never going to do the same thing for your whole career. 2 or 3 years, you might be doing something you may have not liked what you were doing the last 3 years, but it's going to be something new. And the good thing is that you're not going to be doing that forever either, because you'll eventually move on to a different unit serving some other avenue that needs to be, done no matter what, because it eventually either services the courts, it services the community, or it services the clients that are on probation. And in some way or another, whatever unit you're a part of, you really are making a difference on interacting with somebody's life, whether it be face-to-face, writing a report, working with the family, referring them to necessary treatment providers, counselors, things like that, and kind of following up on that stuff. You have a impact whether or not you're directly in front of them or not.
Thank you. I appreciate the more in-depth explanation. It'll help our students kind of understand that too. How about you, Daniel? Do you want to talk to us about what does your job involve? How did you get to this point and decide that this was your path? And what does a typical day look like?
So I had no interest of being in law enforcement when I was younger. It's one of those ones that kind of changed as I was getting older. So I was really into sports and stuff in high school, just like a lot of kids. And I eventually got a scholarship to play football. I eventually got tired of playing football because it wasn't the same spirit as I think as high school. And while I was going to college, I didn't really have much direction. I was starting down a business degree and really wasn't interested in any of the classes. It didn't really kind of speak to me. While I was there, one of my friends had a class in criminal justice, so I took that and was starting to become a fan. But around that same time, I realized that when I wasn't getting scholarships to play football anymore, I had to pay my own way, and that's not cheap. So one of the things that really helped, though, is my family is really big in the medical field. They're either paramedics or RNs or nurse practitioners. It goes all over the place. But my cousin was an instructor. He's a paramedic instructor, but he was also an EMT. So I got my EMT certification. Dave Bile, Mike. And so I ended up getting my EMT cert during one of my summer breaks. And then I had a great opportunity to work 48-hour shifts on the weekend and work my way through college and pay for rent and things like that. So that kind of got me in the door. But as I was working on the EMS side, I really started seeing and having a lot of interaction with police officers and realized they weren't the jerks that were always giving me tickets prior to that, and really kind of got to see them a little bit different. And that's definitely a shout out to Steve. Again, CHP, they write a lot of tickets. So kidding with you, Steve. But that kind of got me going. And so I had actually relocated out to the Midwest because my dad kind of had to move with his job, and the one place that was always home was Visalia, so I made my way back. Went to the academy and decided I was going to try and get a job with Visalia PD, and got lucky because it was definitely very difficult to get your foot in the door in law enforcement when I started. I think we were usually taking maybe 1 to 2 out of every 500 candidates. So I was able to get a job, and I never looked back. I've had a chance to work patrol, DUI, the gang suppression unit. My most passionate spot was the violent crimes unit, where I was a detective for about 4 years. I was assigned to sexual assault, crimes against children. A lot of horrible, horrible things that I saw in my time there, but I also got to help a lot of people. Unfortunately, we kind of get jaded through our careers because a lot of the time we're only dealing with the worst people or people having their worst day. But there I actually got to help a lot of people, and very, very influential in my career. From there, I promoted to sergeant. Eventually went to patrol, and then came back and had a chance to supervise the violent crimes unit, which was like my dream job. In my mind, I was like, I'm never going to leave this. But eventually I got the itch to try and promote again, and eventually where they sent me back to investigations. And just recently I became the District 1 commander, and having a blast. I actually got to go out Saturday and Sunday, or Friday and Saturday night, and play with the officers again, and it was fun. Felt like a kid again. So
Very good. Very good. Steve, since he put you in the hot spot about writing tickets, why don't you give us an explanation of your job and what brought you to it and what a typical day looks like?
Yeah, well, thank you for letting me be here. And thanks for throwing me under the bus, Lieutenant. Yeah, so my start was a little bit different. Like Lieutenant Ford, I did not see myself as being an officer when I was in high school. Matter of fact, if you had told me back then that I was going to be a cop, I would have laughed, because it just wasn't, I just didn't envision myself doing it. So I did several things over the years, worked construction, worked for a gas company. When I was 21, I went into financial advising, and I was doing that, and that was not, I didn't like that. I felt like I was just in sales. And so when I was, fast forward till I was like mid to late 20s, I was married, had kids, and I was looking for something that, at the time I was working construction. So I was looking for something that was more steady instead of construction, which kind of does this, you know, you have good days, you have bad days as far as finances go. So I was looking for something steady. And I remember when I got stopped by a highway patrol officer who said, and I was respectful, you know, I was speeding, he had me. But he said, you should consider a career in law enforcement. Yeah, okay. I'll nod if it means I'm getting out of a ticket, but that didn't happen. He gave me a ticket. So, okay, I was guilty. But I remember back to in high school, we took some sort of an assessment test where you answered a bunch of questions, and at the end of that test, it spits out a list of 5 or 10 careers that would suit you, your personality. And law enforcement, police was somewhere in that top 5 or 10. So after hearing that and talking to people, I thought, you know what, I'll do it. And so I looked into law enforcement, I looked at benefits, I looked at pay, and that's really what led me to this career. I applied for highway patrol. I had respect for law enforcement. I didn't like getting tickets, but I realized why it was necessary. So I went that route. They hired me, they put me through the academy, and we do our academy a little bit different. You apply for us first, then we put you through the academy. So it's a little different than most officers. But from there, I was after I graduated, assigned to LA County, worked down there for a couple years. And then I've been back in the Central Valley ever since. I've been doing this for a little over 14 years now.
Very good. So always be nice when someone pulls you over for a ticket are your parting words, right?
It helps. We appreciate it.
Okay, well, switch over to Mike. Mike, can you fill us in on your career pathway and what led you to where you are, and what does a typical day look like?
Well, I don't know there's a typical day, but nonetheless, I grew up in Southern California, and always had an interest in the fire service. I guess, you know, when you're 5 and you're wearing the fire hat that the Texaco gasoline company, sells for every when you fill up the gas tank. And so I had one of those, and I just slowly, as I came through junior high and high school, Did job shadowing, had the career day, did work, some of the work programs where you could go down and spend the day with the fire department and so forth. And I was in Scouts, and I was an Eagle Scout, and I got the merit badges in first aid and safety and firemanship and all those. And every step I took seemed to just go, this is the career path I'm looking for. I didn't have any interest in to the right or to the left. This seemed to be where I was headed. I went to attended junior college down in Southern California. Got my AS degree, and as soon as I turned 18, I started applying for jobs. And this was back in 1978. And so I started applying for jobs. And back in those days, you know, it was you went and got the application at whatever city it was. You drove it home. You put it in a thing called a typewriter, and you cranked out. You always got two because you knew that you wrote out one with pencil, and then you typed it while looking at it, and then you didn't bother wasting a stamp. You drove it back to that place to make sure they got it before the due date of the application process. And so I just started taking tests all through Southern California, and was never quite successful. I got the man, you were so close letter, but we found another candidate that was more qualified. I got a lot of those, and so I was testing around. The furthest I went was Modesto. I was headed out to the Colorado River. I went to San Diego to test. I did all the beach cities in Southern California. And there was this little place I read in the newspaper, that was called Lindsay. And I had zero idea where Lindsay was, other than there was a famous Los Angeles Dodger that they named their junior high after. And so I came up, took the test in Lindsay, and voila, I got the job. I was 20 years old and 200 miles from anybody I'd ever known. And coming from Los Angeles, I felt like I'd gone back in time. And so I moved up here. I worked in Lindsay. I started Lindsay in 1981 and worked for 11 years there, and came to Visalia had an opening in 92. I took the test, was hired, and I've been with Visalia ever since. I went through the ranks of firefighter, engineer, and I'm now a captain. I've been a captain since 2001. The thing about the firefighting that is pretty magnificent is the fact that not only do you work with the folks, your coworkers, but you also live with them as well. My day starts at 8 a.m. At 5 o'clock, when most people would get in their cars and go home, I walk into the kitchen, and so what do you know, there's my coworkers. And then I walk into the living room, and what do you know, there's my coworkers. And then I walk out to the fire engine, and what do you know, there's the same people I've spent all day with. And we work 2 days on, 4 days off, so it's a 48-96 shift. The term firefighter is pretty narrow as compared to what we do. We do a little bit of everything. When 911 is called, there's no telling what they're going to report on the other end of it. So I've been to a variety of things, from fires to getting cats out of a tree to I got dispatched to. A lady called at 3 in the morning to tell me that there was a thumping sound in her wall and wanted us to come check it out. I'm not sure. I looked through all my fire books and I couldn't find thumping in the wall on any of those pages, so I just had to go figure it out. There's different, like with the police department and probation, there's a lot of different avenues once you're in the fire department that you can go. We have a fire prevention bureau that goes out and does the prevention portion of our job, for trying to prevent fires before they occur. Usually you see these in the schools, in businesses, and so forth. We have an investigation bureau that will go out, and after a suspicious type of fire, or we know it's an arson fire, we'll do the investigation portion. They work pretty close with the police department on bringing that case to closure. We have a hazmat team, so if you're really good at chemistry or anything that's along those lines, you can join the hazmat team and get dressed up in a bubble suit and go and try and fix the problem. We have a rescue team. They perform all sorts of technical rescue that, rappelling out of a building or, climbing through it, going through a tunnel, using the jaws of life to open up a car and get people out. There's a variety of things. Once you get inside the fire service, you're kind of a generalist. You kind of generalize in everything, but you have the opportunity to be a specialist. So as the students come through junior high and they come through high school, they can take those classes that they can kind of look at our job and say, hey, what's the benefit of me taking a chemistry class? Oh, well, if I want to be a firefighter, it ties in with the hazmat team. If they take auto shop, it ties into a lot of the equipment that we carry on the fire engines, whether it's a generator or the jaws of life or a power fan, chainsaws. A lot of the tools that we use have small motors. So it's really important for the students as they go through junior high, high school, and college, as they pick their career, whatever it is, look at that broader, take a broader look at the career you'd like to get into and see how some of the general education classes can really help in getting you ready for that career and for the testing process that's sure to follow.
Thank you. That's a lot. I didn't realize there were so many opportunities within the fire, and that's interesting to hear. Which kind of takes me into the next question. And I think some of you, especially Steve, you already kind of touched on this, but what education and training are required to go into your field? And I know a lot of them start out with certificate programs, but maybe you can also expand. If you want to go up in the ranks, do you need a bachelor's? Do you need a master's? Or is that certificate, will that get you to the point of being able to have the promotions, if that makes sense? Dan, do you want to touch base on that?
Sure. So right now in law enforcement, you do not have to have any type of a degree if you want to be a police officer. Most consistently across the board, we don't usually accept officers under the age of 21, and combination of things. First off, life experience, but also maturity. Obviously, we're working in an occupation where we want emotional maturity, and along with just, basic life experiences, understanding how to pay your bills, showing that you've got good character, and some of that kind of expands as the years go through and you're experiencing things for the first time. However, the legislature is very actively looking at changing some of those requirements for law enforcement. They're looking at requiring a bachelor's degree for 4-year service in military as kind of a precursor for getting into a police academy. And a lot of this has a lot to do with things that have developed as we kind of look at the push for change in the criminal justice field and specifically into the law enforcement side of it. I don't think these are all bad ideas. In fact, I like well-educated, well-rounded. I will tell you that some of the best officers I know have no degree, but I also can tell you that there's a lot of officers that have gained a lot of life experience. So I've got my master's degree, and my master's isn't actually related to criminal justice. I just went with more of a broad degree, but the reason why I wanted that was to see different perspectives. And one of the great things that occur with education is that you get to see a lot of different perspectives. I also improved a great deal in my writing and things like that, which are really important in law enforcement in general. But as you move, you document. Memorandums have become my favorite thing because I do them all the time. They're really not exciting, but they're an important part of my job. Don't worry, Steve. It's just the same as a ticket, less money though. So. But it's one of those things where being a good writer is another form of communication. And if you can't write a good criminal report, the justice system will slow down. And I'm sure Brian can vouch for this. When they're doing sentencing reports, one of the things that they use is the crime report from the officer. And a really poorly written report is going to probably have an effect on that. And so that same concept in being an investigator, I write warrants sometimes that were up to 60, 70 pages. And if you can't write well, the judge is going to kind of laugh you out of the chambers when you try to get the warrant signed. So it was really important in that facet. Again, I'm not saying that you have to, but if we're not going to hire you until you're 21 anyway, you got some years to kind of grow and mature and get your education going at the same time.
So it's interesting that you said that you did your master's in another area just to kind of get that wide breadth of information. When I was doing my master's in counseling, one of the Visalia police officers was actually in my master's program for counseling. And I thought that was an interesting balance to his job. The other thing I was told by one of our YSOs when I was at the school site was that when you go to college, if you're going to get your bachelor's degree, to not necessarily major in criminal justice, but to think about maybe what your second career would be after you retire from being a police officer. So if you like history, go into history. That way maybe you could teach history after you're done, that type of thing. Any thoughts on that?
So I actually minored in history because I was very interested. I'm a huge fan of revisionist history now. But the one, if I was actually recommending anything, English. Grammar, I've always struggled with it. I struggled with it when I was younger. I never really seemed to push above it. I could read really well, but I just couldn't write great until my master's program, and that kind of forced me to really get it together. But English is important. History is a great one, just because I love the experience. I'm very biased in this one. It's very interesting to me. I am not qualified to teach kindergarten math. It really is complex for me. So I think it's kind of each their own type when it comes to that. I know my 13-year-old is absolutely smoking me in math right now when it comes to explaining homework to her. So it's not very entertaining for me.
Fair enough. Brian, how about you? What type of training did you follow?
Well, with the probation department and to be a probation officer, we do require a 4-year degree. The good thing is that we don't necessarily limit what field of study you got your degree in. In fact, with probation, it was because we do so much, whether it be working with people, writing reports, like Lieutenant Ford said, your degree in itself is going to provide a lot of value to our agency or any other organization. If you get it in communications, I mean, you're probably going to be a really well, presenter or public speaker, or just being able to interact with somebody. If you get it in English, your report writing is probably going to not need as much help at first as somebody who maybe hasn't had that experience. But we do require a 4-year degree with our department. If you do work in our juvenile hall, you have the option of working there for a minimum of 2 years before, or 4 years with no degree, before you can maybe promote to a probation officer. If you have a 2-year degree, you can spend 2 years in our juvenile hall before moving out into the probation world. But with our agency and the different things that we do, that's the one great thing, is that the degree, the field of study isn't necessarily the important thing, as it is just having the degree. I got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, but before I had my 2 kids, I was 2/3 done with my thesis for my master's degree, but I chose human behavior psychology. And only because, and I chose that after I chose this career, because I realized that a lot of interactions I have with people on probation, it's really looking at their behavior and trying to change their behavior for the better. One of the other things I did on my own is I went out and became a certified anger management counselor. And it was only on my own doing, because at the time I worked with juveniles and a lot of them are angry, and I wasn't really satisfied with some of the services out in the community. And so I thought to myself, well, what can I do? What can I do to help better the juveniles, or better service them, or provide them a service that I didn't feel was, at the time where it should be. So I took it upon myself. So that's the great thing is, once you get into your career too, I mean, there's, depending on what you do and some of the experiences that you have within your career, if you want that higher education, sometimes that can kind of guide you into something that you would have never thought to study. I mean, human behavior psychology never crossed my mind in my whole life until I dealt with people that I'm working with behavior. So our department does do a 4-year degree, which is good. It definitely helps with some of the things that we do.
It's interesting, and I see this in students. Once you kind of figure out where you're going, things that you didn't think you wanted to study all of a sudden have that interest, and you want to put the time and effort. So like you said, you didn't necessarily want to study psychology, but once you saw that application of it and why it was useful, it became of interest to you. And so I always feel like students need to understand that, you know, it's never too early to understand your career and where you're going with it, because it's going to all of a sudden put everything that you're studying, it gives it practical meaning, I think, and then you buy in more and study harder. Okay, so Steve, I think we already kind of heard earlier what your pathway was. Mike, how about yours? I'm starting to get lost now. Mike, did we go through your training?
Well, for the job, the training for a firefighter, as far as education goes, right, it depends on sometimes it depends on where you apply, where you're looking for a job. Some cities and agencies are looking to have more of they may ask for 30 units of college education when you apply. Some may ask for none. Certainly an AS degree, the AS degree program at the local colleges, that's what I received. I went through when I was looking for a job. Until I got my job, I said, hey, I'm just going to stay in school, and you know, there's no education that hurts you. So I just kept plugging along. So I have my AS degree in fire science. To become a firefighter, you will be asked, if you're working in California, and almost every agency is a fire academy, and that's usually performed at the local colleges. It is a semester-long class. It is can't remember exactly the amount of hours, but typically it starts, you know, January. It's a semester long. It'll cost about $2,000 depending on where you go. At the end, you will get a certificate from the state of California, state fire training, which will allow you to apply for jobs in California. The other educational component that's required in most fire departments is the Emergency Medical Technician 1. And that's most of the time when you see an application process start for a firefighter position, those are the two certificates that you'll need to have to apply. And then there's a testing process that's now kind of online. But as far as educational, they'll ask for those things. 18 is the age, but you usually don't see 18-year-olds firefighters unless you see that as a seasonal firefighter with CAL FIRE. They have a process where, you know, a lot of times young men and women become that seasonal firefighter, and fire season, go up and down the state of California during the summertime, putting out fires, and that's where they get their kind of the experience on, you know, being a firefighter, and really kind of makes them or breaks them. For me, I never went to do the bachelor's portion of the fire science, the fire program, and that was more in that I didn't really want to go any further in my career necessarily. When you get to the bachelor's program, it's more of the administrative part. You're learning about budgeting, you're learning about employee-employer relationships, you're learning about long-term planning. And for me right now, I'm the captain, as a captain, I'm working in the fire station. That's more of the AS degree program that you would do. I also teach. I teach at the college, and I teach ROP, which is a CTE program. And that came out of left field. Like Brian, I had no idea that I had a passion for it until, you know, I was offered a job one time. Hey, do you want to teach a portion of the fire academy? And that was back in about 1989, and that was at Porterville College. And I got offered the same thing at COS, and here we are, and I've been teaching ever since. And so it's really given me a great opportunity to share my passion with young men and women who are coming through and have their goal as a firefighter.
Nice, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next question. I'm going to actually combine two questions together and add a little twist to it. So I'd like to hear what your favorite part of the day is, or part of the job is, and your least favorite. And I think when you tie in with the least favorite, can you also talk about, because, and I'm sure in each of your jobs and careers, because of the field you're in, you see a lot of tragedy at times. So I'm sure that's plays into the least favorite, but how do you deal with the stress too? So Steve, can we start with you? So your favorite part about the job, least favorite, and your best stress buster.
Well, I think the favorite part for me these days is I get to run our Explore program. So that incorporates helping those that are 15 to 21 in that age bracket, help them get law enforcement based training that they can't get normally because they're not old enough. But I've also learned that I enjoy teaching that as well. And it's also kind of fun too, because when they're explorers, you kind of want to give them a taste of what an academy situation is like. So sometimes if they're being knuckleheads, I get to make them do push-ups. So that's kind of fun. But we have some really good young men and women, so it's fulfilling for me. So right now, that's my favorite thing. Least favorite part, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There's some tragedies we see. It's no one likes to deal with death, and the hardest part of that is having to make a death notification to a family member. I think thankfully those days don't happen often, but when they do, it's tough, especially when it's the loss of a child, and having to make that notification to a family, or even on the scene of something tragic, being there for the family, trying to investigate while being cautious and just aware of what they're going through. That's tough. But so how do I deal with that? Well, I have 5 kids of my own, and so they keep me very busy. They play sports, so we're in our backyard quite a bit after school, after work, in the backyard playing, and that just kind of helps me decompress, to see them grow and to hear them laugh, and also to see them work hard in a sport they enjoy. My oldest is 16, my youngest is 7, so there's a big gap there as far as their competitive levels, but just watching them play and then being involved in that, and trying to be better than them as they get better at their sports, and trying to be the, I'm still the dad and I can still whip you if I have to, sort of. But the older 3, they're getting really good at sports, so I don't do that as often. But that's how I deal with those bad days.
Thank you. Dan, how about yourself? The best part of the job, worst part of the job, and the stress buster.
So the best part of the job for me now is being able to watch my officers be successful. There was a time where I was always trying to make my, have solved cases and stuff like that, or have do life-saving measures or things like that made the job exciting. But I don't get to do that quite as much now. So my hope is to be able to provide that opportunity for younger officers and people coming in. So providing them training, providing them my experience, getting them in situations to allow them to be successful, really brings a lot of joy, especially when they come back and talk about what happened and everything like that. So in essence, living vicariously through them on that really brings a lot of joy. The worst days, and I think Steve hit it on the nail on the head on that one, is child deaths. Working crimes against children, I did that pretty much. I did a lot of the stuff on homicides and other things involving them. And nowadays, if I hear about that, I actually start getting pretty bad anxiety. I don't do well with it anymore. So that's something it's always kind of rough to deal with, and notifications to parents, and there's nothing you can do to make that better. It's the worst day of a person's life, no matter what, and it'll never be worse. So that's a tough thing to go through. My stress relief is sometimes it's my kids, sometimes they're the cause of my stress, so I can't completely go with that. I like working out. I like cooking, but reading is probably my biggest stress relief. I usually on my lunch breaks, I'll break out a book. As I said, I love history, revisionist history, kind of taking a look at what people have taught us in the past. My favorite book right now is The Lies Teachers Taught Us, which was just Thanksgiving. You'll never look at it the same way again. But it's just very interesting to me from my perspective to be able to have an opportunity to see how that all it's interesting to me and challenges me to be able to do that, and kind of takes my mind off whatever bad happened. So
Nice. Thank you. Brian, how about yourself? Best, worst, stress?
Yeah, I think where I'm at now is kind of the same with Lieutenant Ford is, you know, as in management now, you get to kind of see those people that in the positions that you were once in, and you get to see their excitement and their joy. And when they see successes, you know, you get to relive those moments. But when I was, you know, actually interacting with probationers and supervising probationers, some of the greatest moments, or even with juveniles, was, you know, when a juvenile or somebody on probation contacts you months, years later, and you know, you supervise so many people, you may not remember the individual, but they definitely always remember their probation officer, because you do have such a big impact in their life. And whether it be I got a job, or, you know, I went to the military, or I graduated college, sometimes when I was their probation officer and years had passed, I was the first person that they contacted to share that news. And it may be because, you know, maybe they attributed some of their success to their probation officer who helped them get along the way. Maybe even to that day, they didn't have anyone to share that news with, so they went to the next person that they felt maybe closest to. And so those are some of the, you know, best days as a probation officer, is being able to see those success stories. And you know, we always see the ones that kind of stay in the system and go through the revolving door, and you know, the ones that do well, you don't ever hear again. So it's nice, or you don't ever see them again. So it's nice when they reach back out to you, because you're like, oh, I wonder what happened to that person. Now I know. Probably one of the worst times is just on the opposite end of that. You know, you have somebody who you set up for success, and maybe they did succeed, and, you know, relapse is a really bad thing. And, you know, they may have gotten a job, or maybe they got housing, maybe they got their family back, and, you know, one bad decision has caused them to spiral out of control. Somebody who's delicate anyways with such matters. And now they're worse off than when you first met them after all the hard work that you did. So that's definitely, you know, one of the more stressful, or the, you know, one of the harder things. It's not, we don't deal with death or anything like that, so I couldn't imagine having to deal with that kind of stuff. But stress relievers, I like to read as well. I like hiking. I grew up backpacking. Anything outdoors. I really try to eat healthy. It's just being in an office, and especially in management now, like being at a desk so much, I can't stress like healthy eating anymore, because most of my day consists of sitting down. I have to like get up and walk around. But yeah, just taking care of yourself mentally, physically, doing whatever you can to kind of, you know, think, or not have to think about work, and really, when you're off of work, make sure that you're off of work, and, you know, focus on that well-being.
Very good. Thank you. Mike, I think you're the last one. So best, worst, and stress.
I've got a couple best, I guess. The best times I've had in my career are not necessarily events, but the folks I've worked with. The team concept in the fire service is always there, because you're always working with a crew. And then there's multiple crews at the fire stations, which are our shifts. And the folks I've had the privilege and opportunity to work with that have helped me to grow as a person, helped me to grow as a professional, and just the opportunities, the things I've shared with them. There's things I think all of us would probably agree in our careers. There's folks that we know, things, calls we've been to, things we've experienced that our families don't. And we didn't bring home to the family and talk about with our wife and maybe our kids, but we shared with one of the other people in our department, one of the other folks on our job or in our crew. And so just the working with those folks has always been a blessing to me. And it's been a blessing about the job. The fact is that as a firefighter, I get to work in that crew environment. The other thing that has been very rewarding for my career, and that actually is on the teaching side, is when you have a student come to you, a former student, and he shows you he's wearing a badge now. And he says, hey, you know, do you remember me? I went through the academy, or I took your class, or you talked to me at this, whatever. And they're now a firefighter, or they're now a police officer. Oddly enough, I was on a call not very long ago, and a CHP officer came up to me, and he says, are you Captain Cromer? And I'm like, yes. He goes, I took your fire class X amount of years ago. And I said, okay, well, obviously I scared you away from the profession, but he explained how he wanted to be in this kind of a career, a public service career, and then ended up going to CHP and starting a career in CHP. But that still is rewarding to hear from students, to hear from students that you made an impact on, or perhaps you had some small. In some small way, you made a difference in their life to become the thing that they, that you perhaps taught them about firefighting or public service, that they took that and continued on, but they thought enough of you to come back and tell you about it. The worst, obviously, is those things that we see in our job. To point to anyone in particular, or one thing in particular is not, but there's enough tragedy out there on a daily basis. Humans do some horrible things, not only to each other, but they experience a lot of horrible things. And as a human being, and all of us are, we get to not only, there's not really a hiding of an emotion. We can kind of hold on to it and bury it down for the moment while we deal with the issue. But God's been pretty gracious to me to give me the strength to do that and give me the peace to, work my way through some of those things. It's helpful for me. I like to work out. I like to ride a bike, play golf, exercise. I play guitar. I don't know if I play guitar. I know I plug in, turn up to 11 and make a lot of noise. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. But I really enjoy those things, those off times. And my family's the best. They're really a blessing.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. So we're down to the final question of the evening. What's your advice to students? If you were in their shoes, what advice would you give them? Steve, do you want to start us out?
Sure. Yeah. And if one of the students here is interested in a career in any one of these fields, I think it's important to do the right thing. Start doing the right thing now. Prepare yourself for success. Surround yourself with people that are going to make you better. And then on the flip side of things, do your best to make those people better. Obviously, school is important to finish well, but try and focus on your passion. Make yourself a better person each day you can. Appreciate what you have. And yeah, just do the right thing. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's a career in this field is long, and days can be difficult, but if you start now, you'll be fantastic and you'll enjoy it even more.
Great advice. Mike, how about yourself?
A couple things. One, you only have one nose, so keep it clean. There's a lot of things that, like Steve said, start now. If you have an interest in public service, if there's things that are going to get in the way of that, distance yourself from those things or those folks, those people. Social media, it goes a long way and lives with you forever. If you have a social media account, get rid of it. Those things, when cities have an interest in you for police officer or firefighter, I'm sure CHP, they do a background investigation. One of the things they do is they're going to look at your social media accounts, where you've been, what you've been doing, what you've been saying, what you've been looking at. And the fastest way to ruin a career that may be just getting started is social media. The other thing I would say is whatever you do, whether it's public service, no matter what, be happy. I pass a lot of people who are going to work in the mornings, and they don't look very happy. They don't look like they're on their way to work, but they look like it's going to be just that, work. And I don't know, they always say that if you're happy, you'll never work a day in your life. So find that thing that you're passionate about, that you would be happy to do for a long time, If that's a manager at a fast food restaurant wearing a paper hat and a little name tag that says, "Hi, my name is," but you are happy to go to work, so be it. And that is a successful career. And I would wish that for all of you.
Great advice. Actually, fantastic advice. Daniel?
Well, kind of starting with keeping the nose clean, I think for all the young kids, it starts with building your courage now. Encourage, everybody thinks is, doing something heroic or something like that. That's not the case. Some of the most courageous people have been the ones that have said no to something or told somebody to stop doing something. For me, going through when I was in my younger or early college years, I was hanging out with a bad crowd, and eventually I recognized I was going to go bad that way. So I had the courage to move on, and that was kind of being able to make my own decisions and having the ability to tell people no, or tell people, you're going to mess up. So just learning from my experience, if you can start that in high school, you're going to be way better off. You won't take you as long to go through school as it did for me. The second thing would definitely come down to physical fitness and a healthy lifestyle. I think it was Mike that said, just living a good, healthy life, working out, stuff like that. That is a huge stress relief in all modes, and especially as you get into this occupation. But if you can start that now as a foundation, you'll be good. And lastly, try all of these fields. Take a look at all of them. See if there's any that fit you better than the other. I thought emergency medicine seemed like a pretty fun one to go down, and then I kind of got to see what law enforcement is. Through that, I've gotten to see what fire is. I mean, Steve's here, CHP, I give him a hard time, but the reality is they have so many different awesome experiences that you could have at CHP, working from drug task force to gang task force to their mate team, which has some of the smartest mathematicians that I've ever seen. Literally can tell you how fast a car was going just based on skid mark measurements and car damage. I still can't figure it out, but they are really there. On the probation side, my wife works. So she actually works at the hall. She gets to interact with juveniles all the time and have that same interaction that Brian was talking about. So there's so many options and so many different lifestyles you could have even within the public service sector with us. So be open and give them all a shot. See what you think.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, before I hit Brian, I want to address our audience. And after this last question, I want to see if we have any questions from our audience. So if you think you have a question for our panelists, this would be a good opportunity to go down to the Q&A and type in those questions now while we have Brian answer the last question. Brian, what's your advice to students?
Yeah, I think we can't emphasize what everyone else already said. One of the units I was in was a background investigator for a couple of years, and it's amazing to see what one bad decision can do to somebody's career or potential career. And it may have happened when they were younger, and unfortunately, sometimes those decisions can live with you forever. Things have really changed. I'm really fortunate. My upbringing, I probably shouldn't have landed here. The odds were against me, but that's kind of the story with a lot of probation officers is, you had some kind of interaction, or you had some family members that had interactions, and fortunately it drew me in the right direction versus, some other people. But yeah, I would say start working towards that goal now. Experience a lot. I mean, the military was great for me. I absolutely loved it. Some of the greatest friends in my whole life is people I served with, and I'll never, trade those moments for anything else. But college is great right off the bat too. It's just something I didn't want to do. But what I made sure I did was I did something. I didn't want to just sit at home, and I tried to tell juveniles when I worked with them that, go off and do something after high school, because, if you go out and do something, you can always come back, and some of your friends are still going to be doing the same thing. So it's not going to hurt you to go out and do something. And if you want to come back and just do nothing with your friends, they'll still be here doing that, most likely. So take a chance on yourself and go out and see the world, and not even college, not even the military, not even a career right away. Go out and find out who you are and kind of explore different cultures, different places. It's all part of growing up, and a lot of those experiences really shape who you will probably become. And they could be sitting here today listening to us, and some of those life experiences might pull you in a totally different direction, and that's totally fine. I mean, 100%, just enjoy life now and just be smart about it, and really just start planning for the future now.
That's great advice. I like the idea of travel and new cultures, new experiences. It really does give you a broader scope of what the world is made of. Okay, we do have a question down in the chat. I'm gonna go ahead and read that off. What advice do you have for students regarding social media use now and how it can affect their future? I think we kind of touched on that, but can some of you reiterate your thoughts on social media and the evils of?
Yeah, I can touch on it too. Not too long ago, doing background investigations, that's one of the things we looked at with social media. The one thing I learned about background investigator school is that once it's on the internet, it's never truly gone. If you delete, you can try to delete it, you know, but the thing about the internet is that there's always a way to access things. The good thing is though, is if you're young, we take that into consideration. We know young people don't always make the best decision. It's, you know, biologically, it's probably correct to say that your development of your brain just really is still growing into your early to mid 20s. So we expect that. But you know, what are you doing if you know that you have something on there that's inappropriate? Do you wait till you're 25 to take it down, or do you have the courage and the maturity to look at it and self-reflect and say, you know what, like this is probably not something that I would want my future employer to see. This is not something I would want my parents to see. So what am I going to do about it right now and today? And how am I going to be more cognizant of what I place on my social media? Doesn't mean you have to post everything, you know, you petting a seal covered in oil and you're cleaning with Dawn soap. But, you know, we also don't want to see some of the things that you wouldn't want your potential employer to see. So just being mature about it and being aware of what you're posting on there.
Yeah, that's good advice because it really is representing you and who you are in terms of moral character. Steve, Mike, Dan, any thoughts, further thoughts on social media?
You wouldn't want your parents to see it, your employer won't want to see it either. So it's pretty simple like that. But the other thing about social media is people get so stuck looking at their phone that they forget to live life. There's a lot of things you can go experience away from your phone that'll give you life experience. Try socializing with people in person. Kind of building on what Brian and Mike have said, when we were younger, we called them telephone tough guys because they could say anything on the phone, but you talk to them in person and usually the attitude changed. It's kind of that same thing on social media now. People say things without thinking about the ramifications and say things they wouldn't normally say to people. So beware of that. And that causes a lot of problems, and it causes you to say things that you absolutely would regret later on. I don't have any social media for that exact reason. I'd rather see you in person. And I really kind of like separating myself from my phone and just, you know, experiencing life now. And just my thoughts.
Yeah, I think you're right. Kids are spending a lot of time on their phone, and they're missing out on those relationships that you form by actually talking to people. We have another question. What single quality can each of you state that you believe is the most important for a first responder?
Probably for, I guess the quality would be trustworthiness / honesty. We go into people's homes that we don't know, we've never met before. They have to have a trust in us when they call 911 or when we have to go to their home or their business, that when we go inside, we've never been there, we don't know who these folks are, but that we're going to provide the best service to them, and they don't have to have any type of fear of us being, you know, untrustworthy around their stuff. They, you know, I've always noticed this for many years, for law enforcement and for fire, for ambulance. When, you know, people call us and we show up, it doesn't matter, you know, there's no group, there's no economic group, there's no political groups, there's no any kind of group. They're just people that dialed 911 and they need help. And hey, please, can you come in and help us? And they're very, very open about that as we come in. And they have to be able to trust that, you know what, these officers, these firefighters, these medics that come in to help us, they're the best that the city or the county or the state has. They're trustworthy. If they tell me this, and this is the real deal. But you have to earn that. You have to be, you know, I have to take what has gone before me, the trust that previous firefighters have had. I have that now, and when I retire, I'll hand that mantle on. But the fire service is a trustworthy group, an honest organization, and I think that's probably the highest quality that we have to have. There's others, but probably that.
Well said. Does anyone want to add to that? I think Mike, you hit it right on the nail on the head there. Okay, we're at 7 o'clock now. I promised you that I'd hold this to an hour. So a couple things. I want to first of all express our appreciation and thanks to Mike and Steve, Dan, Brian. Thank you for giving of your time today and giving advice to our students. It's greatly appreciated, and hopefully they can make better decisions about where they're going with their future based on your experience. To our audience, we did record tonight's event, and I will have that edited and hopefully posted tomorrow afternoon to our College and Career YouTube channel. So if you saw something here that you like and you think your friends would like the information as well, be sure to share that. Brian, I think, is sharing his phone number in the chat right now. So if anyone has questions, you can give him a call. That's very, very sweet of you, Brian. Thank you. And then I also want to do a shout out to Karina Mello. Thank you, Karina, for helping us find great people to come out and talk to our students today. And I always appreciate your support. Is there anything else you guys want to add before we leave tonight? We're good? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.